I am ecstatic today to introduce our speaker. Curt and I first met early this year, maybe January, February kind of time frame. And I'm sure many of you know that I retired at the end of 2013, and my objective out of that retirement was, I had three main objectives, but one of them was international humanitarian kinds of issues. And as a part of that, I was introduced to Curt and think he has absolutely a fabulous program that he will share with us today. So Curt Rosen is the founder and president of World Encounter. Curt has worked in the developing world for over 30 years, and he's been involved in community development to alleviate poverty in Africa, India, China, and Mexico. So with that, please join me in welcoming Curt.
As Mary said, we work in the developing world, primarily Africa at this point, involved in community and rural development, using micro-lending as a tool to help women in particular work their way out of poverty. I'd like to just share with you a little bit this morning stories of two women and what it's been like for them to be involved in this program, what it's been like for them to receive a small loan, how it's impacted their lives, and then have opportunity for a few questions at the end here as well. We take a holistic approach to helping people rise up out of poverty. As I said, we use micro-lending as the particular tool, but poverty is a complex issue, and so when you start working with people at the individual level, individual women, you find that there are some things that are common, but also some things that are distinctive with each of their stories, each of their lives. I'd like to talk about a woman by the name of Atiki Sili. She's in the upper left-hand corner here. Atiki Sili lives in a rural village in central Tanzania, north-central Tanzania. She's married, she has 3 children. Her husband is a primary school teacher now. And with the first loan that Atiki Sili received 5 years ago, she bought 8 chickens. At the time, she had not had any business experience. Her husband was unemployed, and they were pretty desperate in very difficult circumstances, living in a hut with a hard-packed dirt floor and thatched roof. With that first loan, she bought 8 chickens. In the first year, all 8 chickens died. She had attempted to raise them, but she didn't have really much experience with that, and so there was some kind of a virus or something that went through the flock, and that was the end of that. Having paid back much of the loan up to that point and struggling to still pay that back at the end, she did succeed in doing that and applied for a second-year loan. And our staff asked Atiki Sili, well, what will you do different if you want to buy chickens again that will make it any different than the outcome that you experienced the first year? Well, she said, this year I'm not going to spend all of the loan on just the chickens themselves, but I'm going to use some of the money for vaccinations. At this point, after finishing the 3-year loan cycle, Atiki Sili has over 300 chickens. She's expecting to double that number here in the next year. She also provides training to other women in the village who have seen how successful she has been in raising chickens, poultry business. And so she's begun to provide the training that she learned from her experience as well as her own studies in becoming a very successful businesswoman in the community. As I said, the chickens that she has there are basically just moving about in her courtyard there in the village. She has 2 of her children who are helping her at this point. And you see it's very simple there, just a very simple wooden structure that houses the chickens, basically keeps the hyenas from attacking and using up or decimating her flock. Atiki Sili now also has, I think it's about 15 hogs, and she also has a couple of cows. I would say she's become a vertically integrated business because she also has about 10 acres of land that she raises the corn or the maize for feed for the chickens. She also has now purchased and has been using for several years what she calls a chick hatchery, basically an incubator for eggs for chickens. And not only raising her own chickens, but also providing that service for others who want to start their business as well. So from raising the feed herself to incubating the chickens to raising the chickens, selling chickens and selling eggs, and now training other women in the village to do the same kind of enterprise. I'd say Atiki Sili is one of our poster women, you could say. Very successful. And she's also been approached, I think it was about a year and a half ago, by the district commissioner, who's the man that's standing to her left there. And he asked her if she would train him how to raise chickens as well, start a poultry business. Most people, even government officials, have 2 or 3, maybe 4 streams of income. It's a way of kind of insuring yourself without social security systems and unemployment programs and so forth, so that if one income stream dries up, you've got another. And so he now has 300 chickens himself. And he was so proud of this when we were there about 6 months ago, and wanted to show us his chickens. So we were in his government office there, and he's a secretary sitting outside. You ever been in the developing world, you know that any important government official, even a local official, has a secretary that guards the door. So we're sitting out there waiting for him to make himself available. We were ushered in then at some point, chat for a bit, and he wants to show us the chickens. So we walk out past the secretary, and he says to her, "I'll be out." I'll be out. No idea when he'll be back, no indication where he's going, just "I'll be out." And so he takes us to the other side of the village, and he's very proud to show us that he has a successful poultry business. His security guard saw that he had been trained and successful in this, so his security guard approaches Atiki Sili. And it's a multiplying effect that takes place when people are given an opportunity to start a business, to become successful at something that perhaps they haven't done before. And it's not without struggle, it's not without challenges, as Atiki Sili experienced in the beginning. But we're now using and contracting with her periodically to actually provide training for the poultry business, for business principles and concepts in other villages around her own there. So for us, success is not just about becoming individually successful, but also helping others to rise up out of poverty, to work their way out of poverty, just as Atiki Sili has. I was reminded of her beginning when I was there just a couple of months ago and spent some time in her village. One of the persons who was helping her get started just by encouraging her, mentoring her in the beginning was a woman called Margaret. And Margaret said, "I remember 6 or 7 years ago when you first came to my door and you were crying and you were weeping because you couldn't support your family, you didn't know what you could do, you didn't feel like you had any skills." And she said, "Now look where you're at now. Look what has happened and changed in your life." So, as I said, we provide small loans to help people start an income-generating business in rural areas and remote areas. So when you arrive in the main city in Tanzania, it takes you about 8 to 10 hours, depending on road conditions, to get to the areas where we actually work, out in these rural villages. It's subsistence economy, subsistence farming, and so in these villages, there is no employment. Half the villages we work in aren't even on a power grid. So it's very difficult for them to access resources. And you find that without employment, everybody in the village is by definition an entrepreneur. And I'm sure many of you know what that's like, to start your own business, to manage your own business, to grow your own business, and the challenges you face with that. So people working in the subsistence economy are entrepreneurs. They live in what would in these villages be considered a middle class housing. Would be a mud brick walled home that has a cement floor and a tin corrugated roof. That would be considered middle class. And maybe upper middle class if you actually have glass in the windows. Another woman, the second woman that I want to tell you about, is called Miriam. Miriam raises pigs. She also, for her primary income, breaks rock. And she does this 4 hours a day, typically 6 days a week, breaking rock. Sitting there like that, she brings in, or she hires an ox cart to bring in larger stones or boulders, and then she keeps breaking them into smaller rock size depending on what her customers want, whether it's for road construction, building construction, and she produces about 25 5-gallon pails a week. She sells each pail for 60 cents a bucket, or a pail, and so she generates about $15 a week in income. It costs her $6 to purchase the larger boulders and pay for the ox cart to bring them to her backyard. So that leaves her with a net income of 38 cents an hour, which is twice the level of the poverty line in Tanzania. So the people that we try to work with are people who are working or trying to live and raise a family on $2 a day, which is about 40% of the world's population, living on less than $2 a day per person. In addition to breaking rocks, she also raises corn and sunflowers as a cash crop on about 4 acres. So the women in Africa do a lot of the heavy lifting, in most of the developing world, actually. And I suppose there are probably many in this room who'd say they also do it in America. But women carry everything on their heads. I have yet to see a man carry anything on his head. It's 5-gallon water pails, it's piles of firewood, suitcases, anything that they carry, it's carried on their heads. They're oftentimes the breadwinners in a family. They're oftentimes the sole breadwinner in a family. Sometimes husbands move to the city to try and find employment and often stay there, and remittances back to the village tail off, and too often women find that the husband has started a second family in the city. So women, I often refer to them in this case, they're either widows or virtual widows. Average income in the U.S. is about $90 a day. That statistic is probably about 2 or 3 years old now. But compare that with less than $1 a day, about less than 38 cents an hour for your employment. So these are the kinds of people that we're trying to reach out to work with, to help support. The women, when they become a part of our program, when they join the program to receive their loan, they have to become a member of a group. We'd call it a trust investment group in Tanzania. That's a group of 10 women who commit themselves to meet at least once a month to repay the 12-month loan in monthly installments, and to support and encourage one another with the challenges that they face in the local village. So they present a very simple plan for a micro business. We often refer to it not so much as a business as an income-generating kind of endeavor. Each member receives then a microloan that's and it's her own. She can invest it as she chooses. Each woman in the group gets a loan of the same size to be repaid in 1 year, and they co-guarantee or cross-guarantee each other's loan. We don't take any physical collateral. It's not required. Most of them don't have any physical collateral, so they wouldn't be eligible for a program that did require that. It's more what we would refer to as a social collateral, and that is when they cross-guarantee each other's loan, if someone doesn't pay that loan back, the rest of the members need to pay that for that woman or women who would not. Otherwise, they have to, if they don't pay all of the loans back in that group, none of the women in that group can apply for a second or a third-year loan. So there's a vested interest that they have in each other's success. It develops support, a certain camaraderie, encouragement, and actually literally helping each other out when someone needs that help in each of their businesses. So the reason that we provide loans just to women and not to men is because they often find themselves with the greatest obstacles and the least access to resources. And the largest part of the working poor. In a woman's world, a woman's world looks like this. 2/3 of the world's illiterate are made up of women. They perform 2/3 of the world's work, according to World Bank studies. They earn only 1/10 of the world's income. They own less than 1/10 of the world's property. But when they generate income, they spend 90% of it back on the family directly. Anybody want to guess what that is, what that ratio is or percentage when men generate income? Wild guess? 35 to 40%. So if you want to change a village, invest in women and girls, is what we often say. They're the heavy lifters, they're dependable, they have a sense of group accountability and sponsor or support, and they change villages, they change lives. It's not to say that there aren't men who could also take advantage of a loan. I'm not saying that. But the people who face the largest or most dramatic challenges would be, as we call them, the least, the last, and the lost. The women, children, and the poor. They're living the hard places in the developing world, the hardest reached places, beyond the end of the road, so to speak, beyond the end of the tarmac. They're often living at the margins of the village, which is often at the margins of the culture economically in the first place. They're ignored, forgotten, and often live in an environment or context that is controlled by men, whether it's the education or medical system, the government, local government, state or national government. And so there are many challenges they face that men do not face. And our mission really is to the least, the last, the lost, investing in the lives of the least, the last, and the lost. It provides, a microloan provides opportunities to pursue a dream, to establish a sense of, or develop a sense of self-esteem, confidence, and the ability to actually take some control of their lives. As I said, I think in the beginning, our approach is a holistic approach to helping people and communities develop, because poverty is really a complex issue. It's not only, as we often tend to think, a lack of material resources, but it's a matter of legal systems, justice, oppression, corruption, and the kinds of things that they face in that context. So we often encourage people that one way to help, way to kind of break this down into a bite-sized piece is to, you can help somebody help themselves with $1.50 a day, less than what it costs me to go to Caribou and get just a regular coffee. $1.50 a day provides the support for one woman to be involved in the program for 1 year, so about $45 a month. So we raise our support from individuals, businesses, churches, and groups like the Rotary, Lions Club, and so forth. At least we put it out there and invite people to consider participating. I'd like to take just a few moments here and ask for any kinds of questions or response here. I've thrown a lot of information out to you, but I find that very often maybe something wasn't clear, or maybe somebody would like to just ask a question that piqued your curiosity.
3 quick questions. How do you find and reach out and get the information to them that they know the program exists? The second one is, do you guys charge like an interest on it?
Okay.
All
right. The first one is we don't do any advertising. We don't need to. It's all word of mouth. We have a waiting list always of 200 women in the for the program in Tanzania. We don't put any more than that on the waiting list. But people hear about their friends and neighbors who are involved. They hear about it from village to village. And so we begin to move out in concentric circles around a central village where we start. And then we continue to build up until we have maybe 5, 6, 8 groups of women in a village. And that creates a kind of a support system itself. They refer to themselves as mama when they get married and they have children. And oftentimes they become a support system for each other, not just in their own group. But sometimes spouses will want to access those funds, that loan, instead of being used for the loan. And I often say that it's one thing to make one mama unhappy, your spouse. It's quite another to make 10 mamas unhappy. Say nothing of 60 or 80 in the village, because everybody knows everybody. So it's a support system. And secondly, we do charge interest. It's 3% a month, which would be what? APR, 36% a year, that's right. And those funds, none of that comes back to the U.S., neither the principal or the interest. It's used for operating expenses in country for the full-time staff we have, some part-time staff, men and women, who provide interview the women, the applications and so forth, the people who are accepted into the program, provide program monitoring and accountability, disperse the loans, collect the monthly payments, and so forth, and the training that is provided on a monthly basis as well. That would compare with anywhere from 64% to 230% interest, depending on what village you're in, if you were to try to access other local, informal kinds of credit. Sometimes referred to as money sharks, but there's actually a place for people who actually, not at 260% a year, but there's expense involved. It's hard to get to. There are no financial systems in those places. It would be a 2 or 3 hour bus ride away for any woman to access any kind of formal financial institution from the villages where we work. And then she really wouldn't have the courage to walk in the door. And if she did have the courage to walk in the door, she has no physical collateral, nobody to give her a loan. So, other questions? Don?
Do you work with Tanzania government? And if you do or if you don't, what do you do when you have to work with the corruption there?
we don't work with the government. We're registered as an international NGO or nonprofit organization in Tanzania. So we have our own board of directors there as well as here providing oversight. But when you get involved with the government, you usually get wrapped up in it. And so we maintain relationships by meeting with them on a regular basis just to let them know what we're doing in the village. And basically, many of them, most people in the government positions actually want to see development in their village. It may be for self-interested reasons, so they can get elected or re-elected or those kinds of things. But nonetheless, we just don't access government funds. We don't go into the formal capital market, either in country or from the U.S. or elsewhere for the funds that we use for the program. So that's the short answer is no. We don't work directly with the government.
So can you talk a little bit more about the how many years a woman can re-up a loan?
Sure.
And then the other piece that just shocked me, those statistics. Thanks so much for sharing them. The one specifically about how much men spend on their family just made me sad. And of course, just wondering where can we find information about that? Because that just really shocked me.
The World Bank is an excellent source because they do a lot of research and have for decades on poverty alleviation. That's why they were created. I didn't even know that until a few years ago. I thought like the IMF, but it's not. And so the World Bank has lots of resources, which is where these statistics came from. There are others as well. I could share that with you afterwards, other nonprofits or other websites that would have a lot of information for you. What was your first question? How many years? They're 12-month, one-year loan cycles, and they can participate for 3 years. So the goal is to help women start something, but not our intent is not to provide long-term credit to any one woman. And so the loans are always recycled, and so they're extended again to other women in the community, in the village, in addition to what we raise here to add to the capital fund. Yeah, good question.
Could you give me an idea of the diversification of the type of industries that would start?
Again, it's subsistence economy and farming out in these rural areas. So it's raising chickens and pigs, cows, goats. It would be small-scale seamstress, tailoring, small shops and kiosks. They'd maybe call it a mama lisha, which is just basically maybe your front room is used for a restaurant during the daytime, it's your living room at night. Making and selling charcoal out in these rural areas. So it's really small scale, a lot of trade. It's buying something out in the rural areas, bring it into the marketplace to sell in the village, so you've got your retail markup and all those kinds of things. They're also aggregators. So they actually sometimes buy things and put it together, small sums, and put it together for a larger amount because it saves time for people going out and accessing whether it's tomatoes or corn or sunflower seeds out in the rural areas. So there's a lot of middleman kind of thing where you've got, when you actually stop and look at it, you've got 200, 300, and sometimes 400% margin in something like that. Very small scale, but they really know how to leverage that.
Maybe one more question, maybe? How does the banking work? Is it just cash or?
It's cash. It's a cash economy. Barter economy, but we all work with cash. So in the villages, there's actually a lot of cash flowing in the village. It's just that they're very poor and it's spread out. And it varies by season. At the end of a harvest season, there's a lot of economic activity. There's a lot of cash that's moving out through the village. And then as you move through that and through the dry season and up to the next planting season, then it starts to tailor off, and you'll find that they'll often shift then from one small business to another. So they're involved in raising corn and sunflowers as a cash crop during the harvest or the rainy season, harvest season, and then after that starts to tail off, they'll shift into tailoring out of their home. And so it's 2, 3, 4 streams of income that way.
Can you stay?
Yeah, I can stay. Yeah, I'd love to. And thanks again for your questions and the opportunity to share with you. I really like what Rotary does. Your core values, I think, every time I hear them when you start out your meeting, is something that we really identify with, and that is to have people help themselves and to help others, not just themselves, but help others. Thank you.
Stay with us here.